welcome to the 31st edition of Botcasters. Today with Sara Oliver. Sara, welcome.
Hello, Daron. Very nice to be here.
Very nice to have you. Please introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And how did you end up in this business?
Okay, who I am? I am Sara Oliver. I am originally from Spain. I am at the moment living in Bonn, in Germany, working for VUI.Agency, which is a conversational design consultancy company. And where to start? What is my background? I actually studied arts, painting, like very classical. I started all in a very classical way in Spain, in Madrid, in the academy. And as I tried to develop myself as an artist, I decided to continue studying and travel to the States. I got the opportunity to be accepted in a university there to doing a master's degree also in art. I was very curious on, okay, how do you make it as an artist? Or how do you make it in the world in general? And, always very intrigued of how the world works, how we develop ourselves as well. I've been always trying to find my path. But I sense that you want to ask something.
No. I'm listening. I'm intrigued.
Uh-huh. I guess the question here will be like how someone that studies art ends up in conversational design.
So that was a question that was there.
That was there. I will try to get the shortened version in, but let's say that it's the art world. It's a very particular place with lots of ecosystems and protocols, and I was trying to find out if that was my place. I love making art, or I love what art gave me, and it took me also a while to realize that art necessarily didn't have to relate with creating objects. And I was talking with a lot of friends at that time, and like some of the paths for people that study like an artistic career or degree, it's marketing, it's design. It's all of these humanity disciplines that someone can go into the professional world, right, and earn a living. But I was not really attracted to that because I somehow really wanted to have a set of values that will allow me to work in something that I don't need to upsell something that the user would not need. Now I'm using words like user because then I fell into a user UX program. But before that, I also spent a few months flying as a flight attendant because I didn't know what to do with my life.
Talking about user experience.
Exactly.
Right?
Everything adds up to the story. Yeah.
So you did the UX course.
Yeah.
And then?
So a friend of mine started in this business, and like I kept talking with her and started developing a huge curiosity for everything she was doing, no? Like the processes, the tools, the mindset behind, like let's produce things that are useful, that are covering people's needs or problems. And then I went into like a course. I found a course and I signed up. And this is a little bit pre-pandemic. So let's say that I finished my program right when the pandemic starts. And I went into a program that the final project was meant to do with like a startup or a company that it was a co-working space that offered like different master's degrees, and they had like the network of the startups working in the co-working. One of these startups, it's called Monoceros. They do conversational design in Spain. They had a project, and I was very curious about everything around, like Alexa and Siri. Like before I came back to Spain from the States, like I brought my father an Alexa, and it was like the first Alexa. Like Amazon was not selling speakers yet in Europe, no? And my father was really excited, and it was like very fun to like play around this new technology, like suddenly you have a device that like in movies you can talk to, and it can do things for you just by like asking for it. And it was very fascinating, like realizing afterwards, like all these little moments of aha, like have been adding up to where I am now.
And did you program Alexa yourself, or or did you just use the standard out of the box everything?
Out of the box, everything. Yeah.
Ah.
I was not a techie. I was just curious. I was more like also fascinated on the external things, no, not so much uh, invested in how is it really working, which I'm getting afterwards, no.
Yeah.
I'm now learning about all of those things.
But now move forward. You came from that, and you ended up in Berlin. How did that
In Bonn,
happen?
in Bonn,
In Bonn. Sorry, in
in
Bonn.
Bonn. Yes.
Bonn. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. So I did my final thesis with Monoceros in a project that I really enjoyed, and I was starting like to learn about the conversational design community as well. And Nieves, who is one of the persons from Monoceros, it's one of the leaders of Women in Voice
Ah.
in Spain. And she talked to me about the community, so I signed up and started like to researching on my own everything around like conversational design, and I found out a huge community of people just like really excited about the topic, also like sharing everything, and boom, pandemic boost, and we are all locked down. So the community got a lot of strength. No, like people were just like diving in into their computers and looking to connect and to talk, because that was the pandemic took us away from us. No, and I felt very comfortable with the community. It was like wow, like it's just so how like amazing how people are just coming together, uh, being so nice among each other and looking to make things right with values, with ethics. And that was just like what sold me out. It was like, yeah, I want to spend more time here. This is where I want to be. And I started looking for jobs in Spain, but because also of the lockdown, like all my interviews were frozen. Uh, I had to we just then invested time in the community and learning about everything conversational. No, I did the courses on the AWS platform, reading the books as well, watching lots of talks online that were happening, and the Woman in Voice creates this program for mentorship. And then I got assigned to a person, Anna Marie, which is also part of Women in Voice in Germany. And we connected. She wanted to learn more about UX, and I wanted to know more about the job that she was doing. We connected on LinkedIn. We had a really nice chat. And next week on LinkedIn, she writes me, "Hey, my company is looking for designers in UX in the UX field. Would you send me your CV?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." With no expectations, of course, and I just got the job in less than 3 months.
Amazing. So if it wasn't for the pandemic, you wouldn't have been working in Bonn, probably.
You never know. I mean,
Well,
this
we
is
had.
another topic, no? Like the industry and the job market. Let's be honest. I was coming from a long time of exploration. I had a lot of experience in many different things. I got to teach as well in the States, but nothing like on a business level. I've collaborated with the startups. I've participated in hackathons. I know like how to write thousands of proposals, um, but like in my CV, you would not be able to find like X years of experience on a company. That was just not the case.
But the interesting thing is, if you look at a lot of the people in conversational AI that sort of found their passion there, they all have one thing in common. If I zoom out, is that they have life experience, whether they're young or old, doesn't matter. They have certain life experience that you need to create valuable and understand valuable conversations, to understand that how to get someone from A to B in a proper way. And I think if you lack that experience, it's harder.
Mm.
I can't really
Yeah.
explain why, but I think you just need a certain amount of interaction with, regular interaction with people in your life, good or bad, to understand how to create a meaningful conversation. That's
Yeah,
about.
and I guess it's also a high level of curiosity, on reflecting on what are the meanings of things. And I
True.
think that's a very good cue for the conversation we had at the European Chatbot Summit in
Take it
Edinburgh.
away.
Um,
That was inspiring, right? That was fun.
yeah, like don't really remember how our conversation started around art and conversational design.
It was because we talked about my kids, and I said my daughter was in art school. And
Mm,
that's how, and he said, "Oh, me too." Or you said you were in art school, and I said my daughter too. That's how we started on this in this direction, and then it became really interesting.
yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah, I guess what I what it links to is that this idea of how can like your profession or like right now conversational design relate with art is that I start telling you that art in general like we perceive it as objects, right?
You mean like a painting or a statue or something like that?
Normally, like if we haven't had the opportunity to get an education uh, on how art and culture has been evolving through time, and more contemporary times, which like the contemporary movements are not part of our curriculums also in our schools. But those are the ones that really start giving me the broad view that at the end art is about like learning another language, like it's about meanings, is the meaning behind objects, the meaning behind an action, the meaning behind a word, and how you combine these things, these different modes of language. It's how you produce art. I mean, there's thousands of books out there, but you would not consider all of them art, right?
That's an interesting thought. I would definitely not consider all books art, but there are some books I've read that the writer has been so ingenious about the use of words and the way sentences are constructed. I'm a visual thinker. So if a book is written in a visual way, where someone uses the words in the right way and calls up a visual image connected to the words, even though there's no movie, there's just words, but it connects to images in my head. I think that's true art, whether you're a visual thinker or not. If you're able to connect whatever's in a book is written to something in your brain, and it's not just a story that comes and goes. There's more, and I think that's, if you look at poetry. I'm not a big poetry fan, by the way. I have nothing against it, but it's not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about poetry, it's also a piece of a work of art. People use words in a certain order. To some people, it makes no sense. To other people, it makes a lot of sense. It's their life story in that poem. So if you look at that, I think also art is really, really personal. It's what you see, what you feel, what you think, and not necessarily what everybody else uh, uh, sees, feels, or thinks. That's why in a museum you can walk around, see there's tons of paintings, and you might only like one because it appeals to you for whatever reason, and the rest you don't care about.
Because it's linked to experience, and it all depends of also the amount of information that you're holding. This was a conversation that we had very often, no? It's like, yes, like the piece of art or the work of art needs to stand and needs to speak for itself, but everything you do around it is also giving it, adding meaning to the context.
I mean, around the piece of art.
Yeah, so
So,
everything around the curation, like curating the content around
so
the
give
the the object, for
so give me an
example.
example. How would that work for a painting or a statue?
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain
So
it?
um, let's just then project ourselves to a museum,
Okay.
right? Normally, when you are in a museum, you see the object. You don't see the color of the paint of the walls, the way the wires are hide, the elements for how the elements for displacing those objects are being designed. So it really also depends from museum to museum and from the people that have designed the exhibition. But the exhibition is normally curated under a discourse, and then everything that is displayed in the exhibition speaks around that discourse. So it's a story. So if you have a well curated exhibition, you will then enjoy how the different objects and the different pieces of art are connecting among each other and are building up this story. And it's not like one object on itself can be really interesting, but it's also for me what makes the, the, the
The total.
togetherness of the total, uh, what it brings to you, or what it makes you think of. Maybe, for example, I really enjoy going to exhibitions done by the Telefónica Foundation in Madrid. They have a
Okay.
great building, and all the exhibitions they do is the intersection between art and technology. So it's also one that was very interesting is how do we design our cities? How the way that cities are designed is affecting our experience, our way of being in this world, a way of interacting among each other. Like a plaza, having a plaza in the middle of a city, or not having a plaza, how it changes the dynamics among the people, no? And having a combination of works of visual works, of literature as well by philosophers or thinkers, technologies that are also having this creative artistic mindset, well grounded, and their work that they do and they produce. It's also about reflecting on how the things that are creating are impacting the people around them.
It's interesting that the way you describe this. I think that's also one of the reasons why there's a whole discussion going why companies should have an artist on their board or in their management, just to bring that different perspective, different sound to the decision making or the views on strategy or product delivery or service delivery.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take that view, there's one thing I need to ask before we move on. If you talk about an exhibition, which is very specific and usually centered around the story, which makes sense, or an artist. But even when it's an artist, it will have a theme and a story, and they select the works based on that, so they fit into the story.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to a regular museum, when
Mm-hmm.
there's not a special exhibition, there's just pieces of art. So how do you see the story in that?
Well,
Where's the
normally
context?
the context is well thought, or a good museum is always thinking about these topics. It's like maybe it's a timeline, it's a movement, it's uh,
Timeline, I recognize that that you when you walk across there's a logical timeline, the period which something was made, but that then you could recognize the time, the period in the painting or in the statue, but there's still other than time no story. That doesn't mean it's in any way connected other than the period. Um,
well, that's a story on its own. You're learning about the through the objects.
I'm a
This is
barbarian, right?
well, this is like before we had documentation on things, we had objects. Now this is like how we are learning about our past is by studying these things, and these objects and those everything that adds up to that, it's giving you traces of a story. And by putting those traces of the story, you can make the storyline and the narrative complete. So it's also about learning how we, I don't know, an exhibition around how our past tribes used to drink water. I don't know. Like you see the different types of ways that they would design, and why would they add also like decorative elements to it? It's just we have been always driven to make things that are beyond useful.
So
No,
be beyond functionality, you mean?
beyond functionality, yes.
That's interesting. And if you take that knowledge, that idea, that how do you translate that to a conversation in conversation design, or maybe even talking to a customer and understanding what they need, or telling them how they could create a use case for with the technology? How does that translate?
Mm-hmm. Well, if you think about another layer of uh, ex experiencing culture
Yeah,
and objects, it's also about the pleasure that they gave you. It's
the
about
culture, you mean?
the yeah, about the pleasure they gave you.
Okay.
Like, why do you choose let's just say like a piece of technology, no? Like an iPhone over a Samsung, or a Samsung or an iPhone. There are certain elements in their design and the way they have been developed that will make you be going to one decision or the other decision.
That's
Um,
that's interesting. Then maybe I'm not standard because I have an Android phone, and one of the reasons I'm not moving to an iPhone, although there are probably much better and there's a lot of great uses for it, but it's the lock-in they do in Apple,
yeah.
and I think that's somewhere I don't want to be. I don't want to be locked in by technology. I want to have freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And Android sort of gives you that, not completely, but gives you that freedom much more, with negative sides as well. I agree, but that freedom is valuable, and not in terms of money, but it's just I find it scary that a tech party fully locks me in.
Exactly. So there's a lot of people like you, but there's a lot of people like me that I understand that the lock, for example, it helps their product be work together better, more seamless, without connectivity issues among the devices, for example.
I agree, but I also see a lot of things of the model of Nerial, the hooked model.
Mm-hmm.
You probably know it. I see that coming back in there. That they have done a lot of effort to give you such a great customer experience. So it's positive. It's not necessarily negative, but
Mm-hmm.
that you get hooked on that experience. You want no less than that. And it goes without saying, of course, my next phone will be an iPhone because I already had one and I have an iPad and I have a Mac.
You're
I
giving yourself
understand that.
away.
No, but no, not me. But I understand it brings convenience and seamless experience going from one device to the other. However, um, if you connect that to the amount of money you're paying to be actually locked in, um, uh, I think okay. So you're spending more money than on the other devices. The experience is that it's a seamless experience. Um, wouldn't that be they have a head start? I know, but it's something you can copy, and you see that happening with all the apps or all the software that is based on AI. What's happening now? I think
Mm-hmm.
any discussion on which device will be obsolete in the end because it will all happen in the cloud and not on the device anymore. That's what I think will, but that's a vision for the future. It's not,
That's
we're
your
not there
vision, yeah.
yet.
Well, yeah, that's a very interesting topic. I mean, the balance of the decisions, right? At the end, that balance would not look the same for you and for me. And this is
Correct.
where the idea of different user types come into place. And you need to know to whom you are like designing for and what type of people do you want to attract.
You mean in
At
the
the end,
conversation
in the conversation,
or
in
in everything?
everything you
Okay.
design, everything is like the whole world, like even uh, the the interior design of a restaurant, like
That's a profession in itself, by the way, to design
exactly.
restaurants.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So it's the balance of decision that at the end will get you to choose one product or another. But then as a designer, as a product or service designer, you need to know, okay, what I'm designing, all the elements that I'm including in my design, including also the technical part. Like the best developers are the ones that are also curious and creative because together with a conversation with other roles on the team can really make like the product like to the next level, like simplicity in architecture, like everything at the end will add up, you know? um i I tend to do this. I tend to like start a conversation and lose a little bit
It's
of the
okay.
thread.
Uh,
um
we were talking about, but you were covering it. How do you go from that the art, the way art is structured, the context, the way
mhm,
you look at it? How does that translate to conversation design? And actually, when you say you design for different people, that's interesting because if you design a conversation, a
mhm.
chatbot or a voice bot or whatever, um, you don't know who would come on the chatbot, right? So you would assume you have a persona, but all personas could come. So the question is, would you design different conversations for different personas within one chatbot, or would you try to cover all within one chatbot?
Um, well, at the end, there's a process decision. I do believe that in order to really do a good job, you need to take into consideration the different personas. If you have multiple personas, design for like put it down, like empathize with it, review it, live with it
With
for a
all
moment.
of them?
Yeah, define them, define them, and have a look at all of them and have a sense for who are you designing for, even though if it's a big range. When you start designing the paths and the conversation, you can then have that in mind. Okay, like what type of vocabulary I need to be careful with. um, Maybe I can design if it's really different, uh, if the user personas are very different among each other and they have different needs, because at the end you want to design the user personas because you want to find out about their pain points, and the pain points that you have are not the pain points that I will have, but you
Correct.
need to have a huge list of that. The more time you invest in this, the longer the list is. It's clearly that at some point the effort is not worth it. So you need to like, okay, at least have an overview of what is the minimum I need to go for. Um, and then you take the decisions of the designing, because with that in mind, it's very difficult to design. You are designing for yourself at the
Uh,
end.
that's the part I think is a risk in conversation design, that we design for ourselves, but not for the people we're actually designing for.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting, how art, and I compare art actually with life experience,
Mhm.
because it's all in there.
Mhm.
How do you go? How do you use that and apply that on the customer, and not use the outside in approach and not the inside out approach? If it's inside out, you're writing for yourself. It's outside in. You take in consideration what's happening out there, what the pain points of your customers or your potential customers, and solve those in the conversation. That doesn't necessarily mean it's your conversation, but you use all your art or your knowledge about life and
Mm-hmm.
conversations you've had to create those conversations or processes or whatever you want to take care of in your chatbot.
Mm-hmm. Well, I first want to clarify that conversational design doesn't have to be an art. I mean,
Why
you
not?
want to be useful as well. And you want to go straight to the point. Users at the end want the job to be done as fast and quick and as easy as possible.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
If I, we're at number 31, podcast number
Mm-hmm.
31, and we've done some specials. We've tested a lot of chatbots, and I have to be really, really honest. There's very few chatbots that take you from A to B or A to C, wherever you want to go, in the most efficient way. They either present too much language or don't understand me or don't understand I'm here to take care of business, buy something, do an administrative process, or just want information. And it's too elaborate. So if you take that and it's like, what would I actually want as a consumer? So difference between inside out, are we transmitting or are we catering to your needs? That's outside in. Um, Outside in would mean it would be much shorter. If you can't fix it in 1 or 2 steps, give me a live agent because I want you to be a satisfied customer. And the point I'm making is that making a chatbot that is short and concise and does what I want it to do as a consumer, not as a conversation designer, I think that is a proper art in itself, because you need to. You're not writing poems. You're not writing a book. It's if you can do it in 2 lines, do it in 2 instead of 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that it's hard.
Absolutely agree. It is really hard. The thing is that most of the times, you have to take into consideration a lot of things that, as a designer, um, even though you will stake your opinion on this is not necessary, there are business ideas or people wanting to like impose certain like areas or enlarge the time of an interaction with the assistant, for example, because it will showcase that it's more successful because it has long periods of retention the user, which is bullshit.
We agree. That's bullshit. Yes.
Pardon the word, but
No, in this podcast, you don't have to pardon for those words. If we think it's bullshit, it's bullshit. Shit.
hmm. So it's it's a responsibility we all must take into consideration to being able to speak up and really offer our honest opinion without fearing of losing a job, for example, no?
I agree.
Which can get into the could get into the process, but it's also about caring. For me, like an interesting word that could act as a bridge between art and design would be caring.
Caring,
Um, hmm.
as in I care, you care.
Exactly. I
Okay.
care for the things that I do. I pay attention to the things that I do, and I try to do them to the best of my abilities, and try to connect from an emotional perspective as well with the things that I'm doing. So this is how I also like to see when I'm painting, or for example, right now I'm not really producing anything, just uh, doing a watercolor on the iPad for a friend or something for friends. No?
You're doing it on the iPad and you call it the watercolor. That's
Oh
interesting.
yeah. Mm-hmm. It is great.
It's a
I love
digital watercolor.
it's a digital workout, but you need to know how the real watercolor has to work
Okay, so
in the material world
you need
to
to know how
being
to
able to
actually
transmit.
paint with watercolor in order to be able to do it on the iPad.
In my perspective, it really helps.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not a painter, so I would not know. I believe you.
it really, really helps actually. That's another melon,
That's
harder
okay.
way, like how we learn and experience things. Um, eh, lost myself again.
That's okay. You were saying the bridge about
Ah,
caring, being the
caring.
bridge between.
Yeah. When I'm making something, I am enjoying that process of making it. And I'm by the time I'm doing it, I'm looking at it and I see, okay, what is the painting needing? No, um, this is something I really carry with me from a teacher I had at uni. He will always tell us that we get so frustrated with a painting because we still want to produce what we have in our brains, in our minds, no? And then we are not really seeing what the real physical painting is asking for, like what's the next step to do. I mean, you can start with an idea, but at the end you need to go back to observe what's really in front of you, to see, okay, maybe this color is not really fitting here, or this brushstroke is will fit here, or this form needs a little bit more perspective. So you start having a dialogue with the object. And that's the real process of producing something. If you are constantly in your head looking to how can you mimic that idea, then you're going to get frustrated, because what it actually is, it would never match what you have in your mind. And I think it's the same with conversations as well. If you are talking with someone and you've prepared the conversation in your head, right? And this is where I think generative AI really plays a big role here. If you really like design that conversation in your head the way it has to be, it's never gonna be met.
Because consumers never do what you expect them to do.
We never do. We are humans. We are unpredictable. And we have to also accommodate for that. I mean, we have the tools to also be able to know ourselves and know in which areas we can diverge and how to pull back. That's also the designer's work.
But this is actually really interesting, because if I would translate this to what you're saying, to conversation design and just making a conversation, you're saying you cannot actually have a real chatbot out there or voice bot without having it properly tested by the actual consumer, or
Oh, yeah.
involving the consumer in, because I'm trying to
Yeah.
make the bridge here between the art process and what you're saying and conversation design, because that's why we concluded we need to make a podcast
Yes.
about this,
Yes.
because it's such a different perspective, but we come to eventually to the same conclusion as to what is the proper process to get a good chatbot out there. And what we see is when we test them, it's like, okay, maybe they didn't do enough human testing or
Mm-hmm.
asking feedback of their customers, understanding if this actually of value or frustrating. And
Yeah.
I think the point you're making, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the actual testing and feedback loop with your customers, the actual users, not the theoretical users, is of the highest value in order to get a good chatbot out there.
Oh, yeah. I have had my best aha moments. I get aha moments all the time when we go back and test things with users. Yeah.
And what is a typical question you would ask the users?
Um,
Maybe clarify this. You do the testing in interviews or panel discussions, or one-on-one?
it in the project that I am in, and which I cannot talk about, yes, but we have chat based. We have a community and also one-on-ones.
Okay. And what would
It's
you ask,
like,
typically ask someone in a one-on-one about the chatbot? What would you want to know as feedback? Because your brain works a little bit different than other people's brains, because you come from the arts.
mm-hmm,
And I think that's a different way of thinking and looking at things. You see
mm-hmm,
things in art other people won't see. You feel something with art where other people probably won't feel anything with art. And you use that for your conversation design. So I would assume that the questions you would ask a user are also from the perspective of how your brain works, and
mm-hmm.
creating
Um,
value in that way.
Yeah, well, it really depends of what are the goals of the particular testing, right? Are you looking to test a particular feature? Then you also need to think of, okay, how I can present in a scenario without really biasing, like hinting the user towards a certain answer. So um, it depends on the goal as well. But for example, if we rewind to the very beginning of designing a product or a service, and I'm gonna put an example, not related with the particular job I'm doing, but with my final thesis for the UX program. Um, we had a project in which we had to test if an Alexa was a good idea for elderly, right? To have an Alexa in an elderly home, so the kids could contact them. The Alexa could remind the elderly people to take their pills, or to have like a simple conversation, or to just like have health check-ins with them. Um, so first, my understanding of the problem was, okay, how are elderly people relating with technology? Why do they use technology? In what way? So my approach was, okay, I need to first have a like sort of an ethnographic approach to the topic. No, I need to understand how these people and why these people are using technology. I went to a couple of people that I knew and discussed this topic with them and start just having a conversation, trying to like understand what was their day-to-day setup. Why would they use a smartphone? Like why like a 80-year-old woman would just use an iPhone, no, or Samsung, or a smartphone in general. Um, and I realized with this conversation, just being open to listen, uh, that it was because they could communicate with their loved ones, and there was a need. They learned how to use the smartphone because there was a need of communication, and it was bringing them joy to be able to reach out to their uh, nephew, like nieces, family members. Yeah,
It's to stay connected
stay connected.
and
Yeah,
informed.
exactly.
Because in these WhatsApp family groups, they probably get messages, they see pictures.
hmm The topic was also about understanding loneliness, because one of the goals of this project was to understand if a service like this could help elderly people feel less alone. And by understanding, okay, if these people were also feeling lonely, and what are they doing the day to day to not feel that way? It's like I realized that they had the TV on constantly,
To hear
all the
someone
time.
talking.
Yeah. So just the fact of having like the radio or the TV on and have that noise in the back releases a feeling of loneliness. So this is really already giving you ideas of, okay, what are the things that I need to do next, no? Or what kind of product it's gonna really fit. And then we went into testing, okay, if we do um, like a play with them, you put the device, even though the the voice is your voice, you're in a hidden room,
Okay.
and then you see how they talk to the device. How will they interact with the device? And that's already giving you a lot of hints. Okay, maybe if language, if the recognition of the language is not really there because they also speak with a lot of jargon and like different mm, dialects, closed accents and things like that. Like if the language recognition it's not there, the product cannot be successful because you have already like a huge showstopper there.
Yeah, you lose everything.
So maybe like to go with this approach right now and this time and process of development where the technology is right now. is not there, then let's just wait for creating such use cases.
I understand. And all that knowledge, how do you use that now when you have a customer and you need to design something?
With the knowledge from
Which,
that thesis?
yeah, there's a certain approach and thought behind it. I think it's valuable. It's in you right now. It's how you operate. And how do you use that for customers right here, right now? Would you tell customers, sorry, what you want, we can't do it because we you know, or well, you know, other approaches. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how that experience in the past, how that experience relates to the here and now.
Well, I cannot give you any examples
No,
that
I
I'm
understand
currently
that.
working on, but
But the
I know,
way
for
you're
example,
working.
I know of an example that can relate also with my findings. That is a product that is being very successful right now in the market. It's another Spanish startup. They are called Tucubi,
Okay.
and they started like this. They started seeing if like a voice assistant could help elderly people with the communication also with their doctors, right? So they did a lot of testing with the speakers and found out that it was not the right approach currently. And they, through a lot of testing, they realized it was best to call in, to use just like a phone call. They did a lot of testing also with user journeys, but the product is not for the elderly, it's for the doctors and the hospitals. So it's at the end a platform to help monitor, not clients, at the end is
Patience.
patients, to help monitor the patients and to simplify the job of the doctor.
Okay.
So it's like with like a simple questionnaire through phones.
So it's a voice assistant talking to the patient.
And reporting back to the doctor through a platform on a
Uh,
visual form, I
and
believe.
and they extract data from voice.
Exactly.
So it's a speech to text, and then based on the text, they use that as data input to extract relevant variables for the system. And then
Yeah.
what happens next? They use the data for triggers. Oh, we need to call this patient, so he or she needs to come to the practice, to the hospital, or we need to up the medicine or whatever. I don't know, but that
I don't know the particulars of the service, but yes, it's she's been very very successful with the development of the product. It's a small team, but they are receiving a lot of recognitions because they are doing a lot of testing, a lot of user testing, and they are iterating the product constantly and improving it constantly. And yeah, it's a very nice team of people with great values, and they're designing something really good.
well, with an aging population and the amount of pressure, workload on doctors is stunning. So anything that helps release the pressure a bit on the doctors and make service better, I think it's welcome and should be applied universally, not just in Spain, but you know, it's a problem all over Europe or maybe all
Yeah,
over the world.
yeah.
Um,
But that is something that really struck with me, and I think it really relates with your previous with your question. Is they started with an idea, you know, like they see the speaker there, like a potential. There's like a potential there. They tested out. They saw that it was not working well. They even thought about wearables. They also tested with wearables. That didn't work out neither.
that's
And then
interesting.
tested with phones, and this is what they choose to go for.
And why didn't the wearables work? Well,
I don't know the details.
okay.
Yeah, I listened to one of her speeches, and she was telling the story of the company,
Ah,
and that was like I'm sharing it here because it was really like, yes, this is the right approach, and this is the right process to follow because this and this, you know.
now in Edinburgh, your company introduced and was promoting charismatic AI.
Mm-hmm.
You must remember that.
Of course.
And I'm trying to, and I think you need to help me there. I'm trying to make a connection with the art part
Mm-hmm.
and the charismatic part. And I know there's a connection somewhere, but I'm not sure how to connect these dots. So if you could help me there.
Absolutely.
Maybe first
Well,
explain what you guys mean with it, because it's an interesting, I find it an interesting thought where you can discuss it, whether it's right or wrong, but it's an
mm-hmm.
interesting train of thought.
Mm-hmm. Um, well, I think you've also listened to Christoph, and he's
He was
also
in my
gonna be part of
podcast, the
your
specials.
podcast. Yeah. So I haven't been able to listen to it yet, but I'm pretty sure he talked already about charisma,
Tiny little bit.
a tiny little bit. Um, but definitely, I'm charisma is a word that really it sparks me a smile, or at least when people ask about what do you mean by charisma, that's exactly also a little bit the reaction that we are looking for in people, because it's an open word, right? Everybody has such, it's an abstract word. So everybody is projecting their experience and idea of it into the word. So it's an open word that it starts helps you start a conversation, and this is the right trigger that we also wanna generate. Um, but
So
if we
it's a
think
marketing.
about
It's a marketing stunt, or
not
it's
only, it
a
also
conversation starter.
communicates values,
And
right?
those I want to know.
Yeah.
What are the values that are behind using the term charismatic AI? Because you guys are trying to convey a message,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to know that message.
Um, what we talk, what we mean, or what we, yeah, what we mean when we use the word charisma is that it's about the right user journey, is the ideal user journey. Like you could find that into charisma, no? If you think of a charismatic person, it's a what how would you describe a charismatic person? What would you say that a charismatic person is or not is then
I
just in
can tell you
sense?
that. I didn't look it up in a dictionary. It's interesting because very often we have a meaning in our head of a word. And then when you look it up, we have a negative connotation. For instance, if you talk about the word manipulation,
Uh-huh.
um, in our heads that has a negative connotation. But if you look it up in a dictionary, it's not necessarily negative. It's just stating some facts. Um, but we turn it into something negative. And if you talk about a charismatic person, in my head, that is someone that radiates a certain energy, or is in a certain state of flow, which you can see, and it somehow is inspiring. So for instance, if you take a person like Elon Musk, I know when he
Mm-hmm.
talks about him, you could, or even Sam Altman of OpenAI, you can consider these charismatic people. Yeah, in a certain way they are, because they are leading, they are in front of everybody, actually the whole world, and they're not afraid to take a stand and take a position in a discussion. And it's a bit either you hate them or you love them. And there's nothing in between. And it's either you want to follow the person or you don't. And
Mm-hmm.
whether that charisma appeals to you, that is a highly personal thing. Because if you talk about, for instance, Elon Musk, there's some people that will follow him blindly. And there's a lot of people that's like, this guy is megalomaniac, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't
Uh,
consider him charismatic.
no,
I'm
no, no.
sorry.
It's not about Elon. It's not about anybody else. It's not about a specific person, but it's about the idea that someone has a
Presence.
certain energy flow
Mm.
that you recognize and can relate to. That's the other thing. You need to be able to relate to that. If you can't, you don't like the person, or you don't feel the charisma of that person.
Mm-hmm.
And if you translate that to companies, that if you have a charismatic leader that's actually charismatic, um, he or she does not need the title to be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Just by being a charismatic leader or by leading by example, you get leadership. They
Mm-hmm.
people allow you to lead, and that's a whole different position. And you're if you do it right, you're much more successful in that position than, yeah, I'm the director of the company, so you have to do what I say. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work. Well, it doesn't work
Mm-hmm.
anymore, and that's what I
Mm-hmm.
mean with charisma. That's what it is for me.
And I totally agree with you. And
Damn,
a
I hoped we
point.
would have a discussion about this. Now you
Uh,
agree.
and I want to build on what you
Mm.
said. No, I think there's a certain element of maturity and security in that also emanate like that energy. It's emanating those feelings. No, it's also making you feel in a certain way. It's making you feel seen. It's acknowledged, and this is also what attracts us. These like charismatic personalities is you are looking to something to also achieve. Like I find inspiration from these characters as well because there are certain elements from their personality that I would like to get closer to for myself.
Yeah, I
No.
understand. You want to develop that feature in your traits or in your talents or
Hmm.
capabilities.
But at the end of the day, it's also about feeling accomplished, or at least having a positive feeling, leaving a positive feeling in the other. At least is what also charisma is. It's for you. I had another conversation with someone else at the European Chatbot Summit in which they told me that being able to be yourself was for them what charisma is. And this is a lot of, for me, there's a lot of truth in hearing in those words as well, because in order to be confident, in order to being able to emanate that energy, that presence, uh, it requires a level of knowledge on yourself, on the things that you can do and cannot do, how you act, how you don't act, how you manage your emotions and etc. Your words, you take care of your words. Um, is how you've been able to do all of those things, no? And then you are in this state of flow.
And how do you translate that to conversation design? Because I understand this, but it's sort of abstract if you would put that on conversation design. So how do you use the charismatic AI or the charismatic part on the design of a chatbot?
Well, this can be also a playground um, by this also trying to design different assistant personas and designing the dialogues according to these different types of personalities. Check that with the users, see what it's really conveying your message, what it's really helping them achieve their job to be done, and what it's uh, in which of the journeys and in which of the personalities you are achieving a higher success rate as well.
Personalities of the customer, personalities of your chatbot.
The chatbot.
And how do you translate the charismatic part to the chatbot? How does that
Well,
work?
it depends, no? A system persona is a process on its own. It has to relate as well with the brand. So you need to think about it also from a marketing perspective and a communication perspective. How is that chatbot speaking for your brand? And how do you want your brand to talk to your users? How do you want your brand to make your users feel? Maybe you want a more like funny personality or like just straight to the point, not chit chat. Like that's also a charisma. That's also like a personality decision, but you need to take the decision. You can also like if we compare, for example, Google versus Alexa. Alexa and Amazon has a more conversational approach than Google. Google is more multimodal. They show more buttons, they show more boxes to click after a conversation. That's also how they help the users understand what are the things that they can do next with conversation. Alexa is pure conversational. It's just this, for example, on the TV, it's just a line. It's not even showing you the transcript of your words. So it doesn't mean that one is the best than the other. It's just different strategies that you want to take.
So
this needs to be a management decision.
So you're saying actually two things. The charismatic part on one hand is what the customer decides if it's charismatic, because it needs to coincide with what he's wants from the chatbot.
Yeah, it's more like the feeling that you leave in your customers with.
But that's you have a brand, and the brand has a branding message and a way of communicating. I understand that, but that's inside out. If you look outside in, the customer comes for something. The branding might be that we say a lot, that we make long messages. But the customer comes and needs a service, and that wants it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So how do you? It's actually it seems conflicting. You know what I mean? So how do you use the charisma and the brand, which I understand need to be one, to deliver the service the customer actually wants? And that's where I understood previously the testing is so important, because we might think of something that makes perfect sense in our minds and the way we see the customer experience or the customer journey. And yes, here it is. And then the customer tests it. It's like, why do you have 7 steps in between? We don't need them. Just take me from A to C and leave out B. And they're like, maybe he has a point. But it seems so logical. And so if you design them like that, then your charisma is in B. So how do you maintain that brand message and the charisma on the one hand, and the need of the consumer on the other hand?
The charisma is not necessarily in B. It's in every single detail. It's in every word you choose, and in way you say it. Also, text-based, you are way more limitless. Like you're much more limited, because at the end you only have the words. But for example, in audio, you have the words and the tone. And the tone is already conveying a lot of meaning as well. Like, let's just think of an example that I'm pretty sure everybody has experienced. Like, just calling on customer service central. No, you need to do something. Just say with your bank, you've lost your credit card, or you wanna do a transfer. You just call in, and then the first person is not having a good day. It's responding in a, like very monosyllabic, robotic way. Yeah,
They're
what
only
do you
human.
need?
What do you want from them? They're only human.
Totally. But that's exactly my point, no? I totally understand as a customer, as a person that I'm on the other side of the line, that person might not be having a good day, and it also depends on the situation that I'm calling in. Let's just say that I'm in a good situation. I'm having empathy for the other person. I get that you are not having a good day. Thank you so much for helping me, right? I'm saying something that might elevate the feeling, and then might elevate the interaction that I'm going to have afterwards.
And at the same time, make their day a little bit better.
Exactly. So,
it's interesting. You call customer service, and as a consumer, you make the day of the customer service better.
Yeah, because I know I'm dealing with a human, right?
No, I understand.
And then I know what is my job to be done. And then I'm thinking, okay, what is gonna help me make my goal faster? If maybe by saying something that this person is gonna appreciate, it's gonna help me more, right? But if I then choose to say something that will trigger the madness more, I run into the risk of having that person hang up on me and not help me out.
It's the old saying: you attract more positive or more flies with honey than with vinegar.
Yes, exactly.
So it's a bit using the honey to get done what you want to get done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's just then put it on the other side,
Okay.
right? The person that is calling in is not having a good day. I have someone on the other line getting a sense for this and just stating the right words for projecting like a sense of calmness or like security that will like make that person feel like their goal is going to be met quickly, or at least everything is going to be done on the service product side to meet their goal or to help them out as soon as possible.
Yes.
So I'm like, I can, for example, use emotion recognition to change my dialogue later on, or to even
In the
transfer to
chatbot, you mean?
in the chatbot.
You can use an
Not
emotion.
sure yet, but definitely via voice. You can. There's already.
In the chatbot,
Uh,
text-based, you can also analyze emotions. It's
yeah,
that
even though it's a bit more tricky.
I know, but it does happen, but you of course you can miss one, and then coming
Mm-hmm.
back with a reaction like, but I wasn't angry or I wasn't this or that. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, just say I write the F word like multiple times in the chat, then of course they're gonna send me to uh, a person, for example.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So you see emotions as an important thing in well, if it's in a conversation with a customer service, whether it's the emotion of the customer service agent or the client, as an important thing. So how do you see that? Let's talk about a text-based chatbot, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that's what we'll test a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that in a text-based chatbot? Emotions. And
Emotions.
emotions are also part of charisma.
Yeah. Um, well, as I said before, they're way harder to spot in my perspective because there is a lot of meaning in communication that is beyond words and the way you organize your sentences. You know? But it doesn't mean that you can then find the best user journey or the shortest and fastest user journey for them. That's still charismatic because you or by the way you write your prompt, um, it's really important with the way you structure the sentences. Everything there's a lot of meaning in subtleties.
No, I understand, and what you see is typically a lot of chatbots don't pick up on the subtleties. They look for the keywords, and then
Mm-hmm.
they create a response. And that's
Yeah.
why I'm trying to figure out how emotion, which is in the subtleties and the way you structure a sentence. Right now, most of the times there's a keyword or a part of a sentence that is recognized and then delivers you an answer. So and it's not emotionally based very often.
Mm-hmm. No, no, and I'm not saying that everything needs to be emotionally based. So,
No, that's also not what I'm saying. So, like, we sometimes miss it, and what you see in chatbots, typically when that is missed, then you see your frustration going up as a consumer, and you try to express that in what you write. It's like, oh, this is irritating. I'm
mm,
trying to get the right answer. You're not giving me the answer. And it only picks up, oh, not the right answer. It doesn't pick up on the irritating part, where it should say, okay, you want a live agent if there is any,
yeah.
or you want a call number, or you want us to call you back. How
Mm,
can we relieve you of this stress? That's actually
yeah.
what should happen. You should focus on the stress part, and not
Mm-hmm.
and then on service delivery, and not on just trying to push a service where you got it wrong 3 times already. There's a very small chance you will get it right now because I'm so
Mm-hmm.
frustrated. I'm not going to type again, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm,
Yeah.
I'm trying to say. Is like those subtleties. In the end, there are usually no subtleties anymore. They become the major problem, and
Mm-hmm.
only then, when you really express yourself, I'm angry, which most people won't type though. They just stop or try
Mm-hmm.
to look for the phone number on the website.
Yeah.
If they have to do business with you, and if they don't, they'll just go to another company. And that's what I'm trying to say. That as a collective, I think, but also the systems, most of it, we miss out on that. And the escalation model is very often not right for those people, because we try to escalate within the bot and not with the human, which I think would be useful and helpful to create that brand image where you say we need to guard that. And a lot of companies do not. I mean, like we tested Virgin Atlantic a couple of podcasts ago, which is a beautiful brand, literally beautiful brand, well maintained. It has an image of innovative, great service, and fun. And then try that chatbot. There is nothing of the branding in it. Nothing, literally nothing. And I just can't understand why that there's no connection. Could it be that it's just a conversational team that makes the chatbot and it needs to be functional and give information, but marketing or branding is not involved?
Well, at the end, you have people in companies taking decisions. So it also depends on who is taking the decision and what information do they have with them.
Apparently not Richard Branson, because I contacted him, he didn't respond. He's not taking those decisions. But I think it's important to understand, for the people who are listening or watching, that bringing that brand value or the brand voice in there, including detecting emotions, including the charisma part, whatever value you want to give that, is really, really hard to maintain it.
It is.
And it's forgotten, to be honest, in most chatbots. It's like you have done everything, and then someone puts up his face. Oh yeah, by the way, our brand voice, and they're like, yeah, we'll do that. First, let's get it out there, and then it never happens because it's too difficult, it's too hard, it's too much work.
Yeah, and because in general there is a lack also of understanding of how the different elements of a brand are also creating an image, like even sounds, no? Like if you think of Netflix, immediately what it comes into your mind is ta-dun.
True.
Every time,
never thought about that, but yes.
ta-dun.
Yeah.
Those are called the little moments of pleasure in design.
That's interesting, and they resonate. And you don't even know they resonate. That's interesting.
Exactly. Even the smell, right? When you come into a store, everything, that the type of light, the type of music, everything is adding up to the experience. And what you were mentioning before, it's that normally I see that we tend to simplify the conversation, because it's also like we want things implemented as fast as possible. And you know that we need to play with the different elements of and needs of the different stakeholders, but fallbacks and error design, it's a huge part of the design process. And sometimes they're like, I feel that we like to think in journeys from an ideal perspective, but we sometimes miss or forget a bit more about errors, and errors and fallbacks are the most important part of the journey as well.
Well, it also sounds a bit like less is more. Like if you keep the conversation simple and efficient, could be still beautiful conversation, but simple and efficient. But if it doesn't work, then what? And a lot of the times, And actually, they're even harder to design. The fallbacks, they're even harder to design and make people happy than the happy flow. The happy flow is actually not that difficult, but you know, to consider whatever goes wrong, that's where the customers are unhappy and go away, and that's what even an unhappy flow should be a good experience.
And this is also again tying going back to the importance of user journeys, user research. Because imagine in the case that you get a lot of unfrustrated intent, maybe you can design a specific fallback for when your customers tell you I'm frustrated. You know,
I think you should.
Be smart about it. Be smart about it. Be creative.
Yeah, acknowledge it and build on that. Because if you make that customer happy, you know one thing, he's never going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
or she. Um, Having said that, you have a chatbot ready for us to test,
Let's try.
right?
Okay.
Which one is
Mm-hmm.
it?
I wanted to explore Amtrak.
Amtrak.
Amtrak
Amtrak is
chatbot.
American Railways, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
USA. I'm
okay,
gonna share my screen
cool.
and share. You see my screen?
Almost. Yep, I got it. Amtrak.
Okay.
Discover the convenience of travel.
Um, okay, let's dive in. I want to ask you, do you see chatbot overlay?
Nope. Well, maybe it's at the right bottom of the screen, but no, I don't see. Nope. It's well hidden.
Uh-huh. Yeah. This is something that really caught my eye when I first played with it. That's why I also wanted to bring this case. The chatbot is actually on the search bar.
Oh, I would not have.
So
Need help? Ask Julie. Now I see. Where I
you
just
see
assumed it
now
was a search bar. That's okay. It's hidden.
that is hidden, but we can discuss if this is good or not.
Yeah.
But one thing that I really like is that it's not right in my face when I access the website. I have time to be able to look through the options that the website is offering me.
It's not
So,
intrusive. You mean it's not?
mhm.
Annoying you.
So the for those listening, the Amtrak website, there's like a header with the logo, the join, sign in, English, and a search bar in which it's written "Need help?" Ask Julie. Then there is the menu, and then another box element in which you can enter your destination, from where to where, the usual travel
What you would expect on a
travel
website
section.
of a train
Yeah,
organization,
exactly.
train
And then
company.
some banners for communicating, marketing messages,
Yeah.
or yeah, etc. So you have the time to explore what's on the first site without being distracted with an overlay.
Yeah.
For me, that's a positive point.
Yeah. I agree.
Then you if you click on the search icon, a pop-up window opens up with a title called "Ask Julie, your virtual assistant," and a message from the virtual assistant that has also a humanoid look, a female humanoid look, and says, "Hi, I'm Julie, the Amtrak virtual travel assistant. For help on your website, type your question or keyword below." With a hint button that says book tickets and other selecting items that says here's more tips for first-time riders, coronavirus update 5th anniversary.
I have one question. Why do you think there are so many chatbots with a female name and in this case, a female image?
Well, the female gender is always associated with caring, so it's providing this feeling of I'm here to take care for you. But yeah, this is something interesting that okay,
That's
let's
interesting
let's
psychology.
let's think about it, no?
Yeah. It could lead to a whole discussion right now.
Yes.
But let's assume this is also. I agree, but let's assume it for the sake of the argument here that it's true. Okay, what are we going to ask her?
Also, we'll have to think, okay, who is Amtrak users? No, normally the American culture as well is a white female, probably in their 40s, late 30s. May be very representative also from American, but still it's very wide, the website.
So let's ask it a question.
Mm-hmm.
I want to book a ticket to Canada. I don't know. Maybe we can. Let me help you book. Click the button below to start the booking process. Okay. So now is the question, can we book a ticket to Canada, or is it did it just pick up on the I want to book?
Uh-huh. I'll try that out. I would also wanted to mention that something interesting about this overlay is that I can move it around.
Yeah, I saw it. It's
I
totally
can
different than what we're used to
make it bigger.
in a lot of the chatbots that are like on the right-hand corner in the website. They just stay there.
Mm-hmm. So if it's distracting me from something I want to see on the back of the website, I can move it around and check for the information I'm missing.
Yeah, I think that's a good feature.
Also, you can enlarge the overlay. It's not working very smoothly. Like it's already to the maximum. So
okay. Because I think the I don't know what it's like on your screen, but it would be useful if we talk about inclusivity, which reminds me, I got another thought about that. You would assume for all elderly people that they might need to make the letters a little bit bigger, or you need to be able to make them a little bigger. That's one thing about inclusivity. And the other one is there's a lot of people in the US that speak Spanish. I would have assumed that if you give supply transportation to every corner of the country, you would. Spanish is your mother tongue, so that's easy. Okay. So now we're gonna test in. Oh, this is amazing. You just asked the question. Quiero comprar un ticket a Nueva York, sorry. So you asked, can I buy a ticket to New York? But then it answers you in English instead of, so it recognizes it's a different language. It says Amtrak.com is available in English, Spanish, German, and French. Change languages in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. For more help, please contact us by clicking the link below. So then the question is, the funny thing, it says German, and there's no German in the drop-down menu.
Well, maybe it's hidden.
Oh,
no.
Chinese?
No.
But that's interesting. It doesn't say it has it in Chinese. And then, see? English, Spanish, German, and French. And then the drop-down menu, it's English, French, Espanol, and Chinese. And German's nowhere to be found, and in their message, there's no Chinese.
Well, those are little inconsistencies, that they are also easy to miss if you don't test it out.
No, but it's funny. This is it's what you see happening very often, that the chatbot team and the website team, the web team, are two different teams that are not always cooperating for 100% or exchanging information, or one is ahead of the other in terms of updating. And that's when you get these weird inconsistencies that are not necessary. And I think it's bad for your brand, by the way, to have those inconsistencies.
Yeah, and this is like a regular pain point that we are encountering, that normally voices think it's being thought as the cherry on the top, like an over-the-top service, and that's never the right approach, because it needs to communicate with the back.
I'm curious, if you would choose Espanol as a language, does the chatbot change to Spanish, or does it continue in English? Where did it go?
No, you lose. There is no more search functionality with chatbot.
So that's really silly. If you talk about customer experience and service, you're talking to it in English. Oh, let's change to my native language, and all of a sudden the chatbot disappears. And no message of it going to disappear. By the way, if you change to Spanish, you can't talk to me anymore. That is annoying. If we could go back to English.
Yeah, let's do it.
You know your camera is off.
Yeah,
Okay.
give you 1 sec. I'm on. Back to English, and then let's try to book a ticket, and
Okay.
I think we can leave it there as well. I want to book a ticket from, let's just say, Boston to New York, or tomorrow. I'm gonna give it all the info.
Yeah, there's multiple locations with that name.
So it's still keeping my previous conversation. So I have the history log.
Yeah.
Something has happened on the back.
Does
I
it
don't know
went
if
back
you
to English?
realized. No.
So what happened?
It's the one traveler
It
just was
assumed,
selected.
but
Yeah.
it's interesting. You said I want, so it assumes it's one person, but it never asked you.
Last time I checked it, maybe there will be a bug. The from and the to boxes were filled with the destinations that
But
I wrote on the chatbot, but not now. I don't know.
so
Let's
let's
just select
try.
them one.
So it gives you three possible destinations
No,
in
it's three different like
stations.
takeout locations. Yeah, there's 3 stations in Boston.
Yeah. So it's sorry. Yeah. It's,
Choose one.
and then New York
It
is
asked me which is station in New York.
yeah. So you selected Boston, Massachusetts South Station, and New York Moynihan Train Hall at Penn Station. Okay.
And
So
then I select find trains.
okay.
I also
So
have a link that says view existing reservations.
okay. So
Find trains. See, in the back, it was very quickly, the
it fills.
elements
Yeah.
were filled.
And it
The
uses
boxes.
the actual search engine on the website to
Yeah.
deliver you a result. And this is interesting. The chatbot and the website are now coexisting or working together on giving you the information, whereas so you have to move the chatbot around in order to see what you need to see.
Exactly.
So if you
For
could
me, it's not
choose,
the best experience, but
would you
it's
rather
way
have?
better than what is like a lot of current states.
I agree. Would you rather have the transportation information, like the times and the prices, in the chatbot? Would that be more convenient for you from a design perspective?
Not necessarily. I normally tend to incline myself for split screens because I don't like overlays.
Okay.
Unless the overlay it's very well thought. Overlays are always super distracting and
Annoying.
always annoying in the middle. Yeah, they are
Yeah.
always like hiding information that you
So
want to see.
in this case, you would have the chatbot on the right and become small again, and so you can look on the website to see the times and the prices and decide what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I just have imagine like this chatbot would be like a vertical column on the right section, no? And
Yeah.
in which I can scroll up to check on the history, but then I have the support vision on the left.
What do you think? What do you think at the bottom? It asks the question under the messages, yes or no. Do you think that's a good way of asking feedback from the customer?
It's always like asking feedback from the customer is always very tricky, at least during the journey. But I think it's very important that at least you can have a check-in during the journey in which you say, no, it didn't work here. That way you can, from like if you're reviewing the journey, you can have like a specific moment in which you can go to. If a lot of people are clicking no here, then you're gonna see something is wrong in this step.
Yeah, and you get half of the answer because you don't know what is wrong. You don't
Then you can
understand.
go into and doing like a in-depth qualitative survey with some customers.
Yeah, because right now, if I'm trying to book a train, I'm not interested in doing a survey. I just want to book the train. I want to buy my ticket.
Let's just say that select the train and fare you want. I mean, for me, the typography is really small, even for
Yeah,
me.
well, for me too.
Like I am normally really good with reading small
But
letters,
you
but
know why? What's the problem here? It's a combination of the size of the letters and the fact that they use white, or actually, that's the background, and gray. The difference between the two is too small. Whereas if you look at the black and the gray at the bottom, that's a lot easier to read. Or the dark blue,
yeah.
maybe, but it's a dark color and a lighter color.
They're also using a bigger typography when presenting links.
Yeah, that's weird because that's probably in the rules somewhere. If we put in a link, it's this size. But I think typography they wanted to put too much information in too small a box, so they changed the typography.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, all of this is always a challenge. Like
I don't think it's a
to
challenge; it's a choice.
it is
If
yeah.
we go back to where you said, okay, which personas are you serving? You could ask the question: are we serving mainly young people or old people or in between people on this website? And if it's old people, you know you should have a button in large font or to make it easier to read. The whole question is here about is Julie inclusive or not? And I don't think Julie's very inclusive. Also, the language problem. If you speak another language, you're banned from using the chatbot, which
Yeah.
to me makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, which is also a very positive point of this conversational technology because it can immediately makes the translation, but still you should use language location services because
I
you need
agree,
to
but
adapt also.
yeah, but that's confusing because you speak your English as well. You live in Germany. You go to a German website. If it's location based, it will present it to you in German. But you don't want to talk to it in German. You want to talk to it in English, at least, or Spanish. But
Yeah.
you'll have a hard time getting it set to English because your location is Germany.
Yeah.
And I
A free
think
program I'm always encountering.
I'm not surprised. But that's when I test a chatbot from Holland and try to test something from another country, it takes my location. So you're in Holland, so you get the Dutch side. I don't want the Dutch side. I want the English-speaking side. And sometimes you have a hard time getting there. Of course, you could
Yeah.
use a VPN and everything and change the location, then it recognizes a different look. I understand that. But in this case, I think Julie could be a lot more inclusive. And if you can change the text on the website, you can change the text in the chatbot. It shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with you.
So Amtrak, you need to do a bit better than this, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, they definitely incorporated some interesting elements, and I totally see that they thought through where would they place the chatbot and
And the
things like
interaction
that.
between what you do in the chatbot and what happens in the website, I think that's amazing. I haven't seen that before. So I think that they did a great job there.
Yeah.
However, we would have
Place for improvement? Yes. Check.
yes, and that's on the part of inclusivity. All the people type the font size, the colors, and the language part.
Yeah, definitely.
What else? Let's see what it does when we ask it a question which doesn't make sense. So if you travel with the train, right, you would assume you get to a station. You might want extra transportation. Now in Holland, we have a concept with that where, of course, in Holland, you reserve a train and a bicycle. So you get out of the train, you can take a bicycle. But I would assume in America, you reserve a train and you would need a rental car. So let's ask it if we can rent a car. Because yeah, you would think about mobility.
So your search for Amtrak has a pop-up window now that asks me if I want to leave the page and have my data unsaved and lost.
Where did you see that?
On the top. You don't see that. Okay, it's from the browser because it's going to direct me to another website.
This is an external link, the great deals on car rentals.
Yeah, so it's going to push me to an external link, and the browser is asking me if I want to leave without saving my data or my journey. Okay. And on the chatbot, they are telling me if I want to start a search for a car rental, I can click on great deals on car rentals.
What happens if you click it? Can we see it, or it starts a new tab?
I need to say okay to this pop-up from the browser, which you are not seeing on the screen. I see.
We're not seeing it.
And let's see. I said okay. I press okay. Nothing has happened.
Well, that's a great deal for a rental car.
Now it does.
Now it Amtrak hotels and cars.
There you go.
So this is interesting. They have a service, hotels and cars. It's Amtrak labeled. They probably use another company to service them, because there are a lot of companies that do that. If you could go back to their original website, where on earth it says here Amtrak cars and hotels? So this I find really interesting. Now we go back to branding. As I said, Amtrak is it's a train company, but it's about mobility, getting me from A to B. So if I was, what you see a lot of airlines do, they sell you, especially the low-cost airlines, they sell you the ticket. They say, oh, you need a transfer, and then the hotels or a package deal, where you get all of it, and they use different partners to do that. Here they have done it, but they're not advertising it on their site. They're not promoting it. I would assume that everywhere you would say, oh, you want to get to your final destination, rent a car through us, and it'll be ready at the train station or whatever. I don't know. So they miss a commercial opportunity. And this is one of the things I'm so surprised about in so many chatbots or websites even, is that the conversion from conversation to transaction. So here it's there's extra transactions here to be made, or in our case, maybe we do want a hotel or a car, but why isn't it automatically offered? You could use the chatbot as a pop-up. Do you need a car to get to your final destination? Oh, you can rent it here. If you book your train ticket, you have a special deal.
Well, because also normally as we said before, conversational interfaces and journeys are normally detached from the journeys from the website. And there are different teams, they're not collaborating, communication is always very hard. Cross company also depends on how big the company is.
True.
So a lot of the times you're working in a company, doing something in it, and you don't know what other departments are doing.
But don't you think it's crazy that in this case the chatbot is commercially further ahead, only if we ask for it, by the way, than the website? Because and at the same time, it makes total sense that if you're offering mobility, you offer me something to get to my final destination. I mean, the train station is not my final destination.
Yeah.
It's a means to get somewhere.
That you will then need a team that looks at everything from an overarching perspective and looks at the whole journey from really like the start to the beginning, and then if also together with decision makers, they want to offer things pre-train and after the train experience. So
Yeah.
it also is also a business decision.
I agree, and I think there's basically money to be made here, and at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, you up your service level. You don't expect it, but hey, that's great. So if my train is late at the car rental company, they understand I'll be late picking up the car. Okay, cool. I don't have to tell them.
Yeah, that's very ideal, but again, you need interoperability between these different services and they need to work well. So if
I
they don't
fully
work
agree.
well, better not offer them.
I fully agree, but we're talking about charisma
Mm-hmm.
and a brand voice or brand image. This is, if you're offering mobility, and I would assume Amtrak is offering mobility because it takes you from A to B, this would be somewhere high on the list to help customers. And maybe they did research, customers don't want it, so it's just a fallback scenario that if someone asks for it, we can offer it. That could also be the case. But looking at the size of the US, that the train is never the final destination, you would assume, well, unless in big cities, that a rental car would be the next thing you would get to your final destination, unless someone is
Yeah.
picking you up. Anyway, so
Yeah.
um, I would do something with it commercially, but that's maybe my.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe for New York, I don't offer you a rental car. I offer you a taxi, and then if your destination is Los Angeles, then I do offer you a rental car.
Yeah,
So like you can also adapt like what's the habits or the needs for the different destinations. But again, that needs like a lot of attention to detail, and that requires a lot of effort of looking at every single use case, destination. Um,
true,
and that it's
but
a lot of
also
complexity within that process.
I understand, but just asking if we leave out all the complexity, and I do understand and appreciate the complexity, and I know it's there. But if you zoom out, you say, okay, let's forget about if it's a city or a rural area or whatever. We don't know, for starters, what your final destination is, and we're not going to assume we know. We're just going to ask everybody, would you be interested in a great deal on a rental car and or a hotel? If they say yes, great, here it is. If they say no, that's also fine. And
Yeah,
then
that's what Ryanair does, for example.
exactly, and they're quite successful at it actually. And I think here it's sort of the same thing. And I understand and I appreciate they're a train company, so offering a rental car is not in their system or less in their system and not so high on their list. But from a user perspective or customer perspective, hey, you're wowing me with end-to-end service. And the interoperability, you're fully right. If it doesn't work, it will turn out into a total disaster.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for testing this chatbot with me. I think we've learned it has good points and it has some points that are leave some space for improvement. But overall, I'm not negative about it.
No, I agree. That's why I also wanted to bring it here and discuss some topics with you because I see that a lot of the times we discuss about the conversation aspect of things, but we don't talk about everything else that accompanies it.
Yeah, and here you one of the things that came to my mind is that, of course, we don't know the business strategy of Amtrak, but you would assume they're in the business of mobility, but making money with it. Then and you need to serve the customer, otherwise you won't make any money. Then, especially in America, you would assume amazing service creates loyalty with customers and brand value, etc. And that part was a bit missing. But then again, it might be in their strategy not to do that, and then it makes perfect sense. Sarah, is there any advice if someone is working in conversation design, from your perspective, going from an artist to conversation design? And thank you for expressing that in such a clear way. What advice would you give conversation designers that are designing conversations?
Hmm.
From your perspective, right, as an artist.
My perspective, okay. I guess that something that helps me is to always stay very open to the things, stay open and curious. Like you never know also where inspiration can come from. So, for example, I like to go to exhibitions or just to visit new cities, and by discussing the topics with friends and asking them about their opinion as well, I get a lot of ideas. So,
So you get your inspiration somewhere else, not
oh,
typically in the actual conversation design.
um, sometimes getting out of that process helps to find new ideas as well.
That's like with
Yeah.
regular innovation, that you get
Mm-hmm.
your inspiration at the weirdest moments, places, right?
Yeah.
And then this eureka moments like, oh, damn.
Yeah. It's a balance of it's a balancing act as well. It's,
Okay, and if you would have to give an advice to C-level people in corporations that are implementing a chatbot,
mm-hmm.
and from an artist's perspective, what should executives consider or think about using that artist perspective when
Well,
we
I will
talk
go back
about,
to care.
yeah.
I will go back to the caring aspect and not I've seen that a lot of the times design is being undervalued, and it's now starting to pick up more traction in because we are starting to see the value of design. But I will tell them to open their minds a bit more and explore what's happening um, in the art fields as well, like what tech and art is doing, uh, what and to start thinking what they really want their product and service to be, like to think about the users,
Well, and care
not themselves
actually
as users.
actually care about the users,
Yeah,
not just see them
care.
as a money machine, but actually the way doctors see their patients, if they
Yeah.
do it properly.
Yeah, if we come up from a caring perspective first instead of a money-making perspective first, I would still think I deeply believe that we will get to the same place or even better, creating better in product design.
So if you take good care of your customers and your employees, by the way, that eventually, if you do it properly, will lead you to
Pays off.
making money. It pays off.
Yeah.
I think that's a
Hmm.
very good conclusion of a nice podcast. Thank you very much, Sarah. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward where your artistic um, ideas will bring you in the conversational AI world. My feeling is that it's going to take you far, but
Thank you.
we'll see in the near future. Thank you very much, and well, hope to see you grow and flourish in the conversational AI world.
Thank you very much, Doran. It was also a great pleasure to be here and have a conversation with you, and to also have a platform to share some thoughts